All right. Thanks a lot for introductions. Lovely to get to know some of you. Most of you I already knew, but I'm looking forward to meeting the rest as well. And we can always interact, as we said before, in the course of the workshop. So the big question, of course, that we want to start off with is what exactly is the value of events for your social and dating life? Why are they important? You all probably heard of that idea of going to events, but I want to show you a graphic that illustrates what the exact value proposition of events is. And I think it gets very clear on this little graph here. You see, these are different ways of meeting new people. And obviously, meeting new people is an important part of dating. And you can see on the x-axis the compatibility. So those are the kind of qualities that you would want in people that you meet. That is like some kind of quality measure for you. How well do they align with your interests? How well do they actually align with your personality? And on the y-axis, you see the volume. That's the number of people that you can meet in different places on different strategies. And so one way that we already heard here in the call was online dating. And for many, me included, online dating didn't give me a lot of volume. It was very few matches. And the compatibility on top of that was also very low. So that's the one way that I didn't find very useful for my life. And many of us here in this call apparently also. But there are these other offline ways of meeting people. And those are all mapped out here. Public spaces offer a lot of volume. You have a lot of people that are passing through your everyday life in a supermarket, in a train, in a maybe in a public just waiting area. And those places are great to socialize in, except oftentimes the compatibility in those places is, well, uncertain. You might meet someone that is really vibing with you, but a lot of people also are completely different. In friend circle socializing, you have a lot of compatibility usually because people are very filtered. You know, they're very aligned with your interests. They already hang around with your friends. But on the other hand, the volume is rather low. In most situations, you don't meet a lot of people in your friend circle continuously. And so this is one sweet spot that events opens. Events give you the filter of a friend circle, gives you like a really compatible group of people that are already pre-groomed, and basically it's like a very focused, targeted lead generation. And then it's also a high volume, a high concentration, and thereby a high volume of people that you can meet in one spot. So it's pretty much a no-brainer that events are extremely useful. It's like the organizer of the event has done a lot of work to bring a lot of highly compatible people, if you know which events to go to that one place. And now you're in that place in the same real world setting. And so you have a unique opportunity to meet people here. This is the main reason why events are extremely useful for meeting people. But actually, meeting people is obviously not the only thing that we care about. We don't just want to meet new people. We also want to go on dates with people that we already kind of know. That can be a romantic date, can also be a friendship date, can also be networking. Just having events that you can go to together with other people is also a huge value because it actually allows you to show your character. It allows you to convey your identity to someone by selecting a certain event and going on a date with someone to that event. You say a lot, right? You convey what kind of interests you have, what kind of lifestyle you have, what kind of way of managing things you have. And that's so much information for the other person. And it's just much less intense than going on a candlelight dinner in this kind of very face-to-face, one-on-one situation. It can be a bit tense, right? So the other real obvious benefit of going to events is that you even just can go yourself alone and enjoy yourself and learn what you really love and what you enjoy, what makes you have a lot of fun. And that's also a great value that is good in itself, but also for dating, because people love people that know how to generate fun, and events are one great way to learn that skill of generating fun. And then lastly, even without the fun, you actually can learn a lot. and refine your own character, refine your taste, get acquainted with the culture. And then all of those things also help you with your communication skills, because just by like looking at theater performances, looking at great art, absorbing the information in a museum, you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that you can then let it flow into your communication and then share with the people that you meet. So that makes you an interesting person to talk to, obviously. But then, of course, the question becomes, how do you find the right events? And the answer here would be to actually find out what you really enjoy. And that sounds very easy. It's much easier said than done. But there is a process that you can follow to actually find out what you enjoy. And that process involves mapping out your interests. And it's something that is actually harder than it looks. I did it for myself, but it took me a while to really come up with this map here. And so this is a process that I would highly recommend everyone does at one point in their lives. They sit down and really, really write down all the different things that they're interested in and try to map them out. And it can look very, very different for every single person. But once you have that map, you first get a completely new lens through which to see the world, because you look at all the stuff and you filter it based on whether it matches one of these interests. And second, each of these interests also has a community. And so you can just go and do whatever is written in that bubble, and you'll find people obviously that enjoy that, and you'll already meet people that can then refer you to other events, refer you to the regular events of that community. But the first part is actually really remarkable. The fact that once you have written down something and really cleared it up in your mind, you actually see more of the corresponding information. So once I wrote down that these are my interests, I can now walk through the city and I see posters. I'm standing at the bus stop and I just look around and like basically looking into the empty space, and suddenly this poster jumps out to me. It says like something like Vegan Food Week. And so this is only because I have clarified in my mind that veganism is something that I'm passionate about. And so that's why my mind automatically sees those things in my physical environment. We don't often actually believe what we see. We don't perceive what we see. We have something as a preconceived notion in our mind, and then we see whatever matches that. And it's similar with, let's say, sober culture. I'm into partying without alcohol, right? And so I just walk around in my life, and once in a while I'm in an area and I look at Google Maps, and suddenly I see in the corner of the screen a little bar that's named Zero Lick. And I'm curious, like, what is that? Oh, it's a bar that only has alcohol-free cocktails. All right, this goes down on my list, right? This goes down on my event or venue ideas that I can take people to for dates, that I can organize events in, that I will check out to see what events are happening there. So once you have this cleared up, your perception really opens up and you will actually find more events and communities organically. We already talked about one type of event, which is the community event. Each of these communities has their own regular recurring events. So for example, I'm part of the tango community. I like to dance tango sometimes, and they have a tango night every single evening in Berlin. There's a tango party somewhere. And there's some pros and cons. For one, you have this community of people who see each other over and over again, right? It's the same people. On a Monday night, you will see 80% of people who were there the last week. And so that's something that will reduce the chance of you having a lot of volume here. So these events are not specifically meant for dating, and the probability that you'll find someone there is rather low. It's similar with meetups. Meetups are usually not specifically meant for dating. There are some exceptions. There are some dating meetups, but usually the people who hang out there are not exactly compatible to you, and oftentimes even a little bit desperate. So maybe these meetups are also not exactly the place where the probability of you finding compatible matches is very high. And so that's why I want to focus on the other two types of events here on the right, which is one, parties and venues, and then one-off events. And then there's a third one, which we'll go into more detail right after this, your own events. But first, about parties and one-off events. I think those are the two events that you really want to look at in the beginning when you get started on using events for dating, because parties are regular, they're frequent, you have new people all the time. And with parties especially, the dating motive is completely accepted. It's not just like a side effect, it's actually one of the main things that people go to parties for, to get to know new people and flirt and actually find a compatible partner. And that's something a lot of people actually don't really accept, and I disagree strongly. I think that most people go to parties to have the option or the possibility of meeting new people. And there is a downside here, which is that you have to often do quite some research in order to find the right venues. You have to research how to get into the venue, what kind of dress code, what kind of culture it has. And I want to give one example here, which is a sober party that I found out. As you know already, I'm into sober partying. And again, I just looked at my email, and there was one email of hundreds in a newsletter format, and it said something like sober party. So it jumped out to me because I know this is what I'm interested in. And then I found out that there's a party that's happening every month where they basically have a real good DJ, extremely hardcore techno music, the way you imagine it in a Berlin underground club, but then there's no alcohol being served there. So that's, of course, an easy pick for me. I always go to that kind of party, even if I don't know anyone, and even if I just don't know the music, I'm going to go and support that. Then there are one-off events. That's the next category. And the cool thing here is that there is a huge volume. It's always lots of new people. And there's even more excitement and connection among the people that go to those events, because those events don't happen all the time, right? Those are like festivals, Love Parade, Fashion Week, the Berlinale Film Festival just happened now. And another example, actually Philip told me about this. In the Philharmonie, there was a special concert about electronic music, and it was in this old classical concert hall. So that connection was very unique, and it was completely booked out, and I still managed to get a ticket. And you could see that this was a very, very hand-picked kind of, in some way, cultural, I don't want to say elite, but cultural avant-garde, you know? And so these kinds of one-off events, they're really great at collecting a certain kind of demographic and putting them all together and creating a huge excitement and connection among those people. But then, of course, the obvious question is, where do you guys look for these events? How do you find them, right? I gave you some examples, but let's look at it more systematically. I put them here into another two-dimensional graph, the four options that you have. And on the y-axis here, you see the relevance. So that is how actually compatible is the event to your interests, how much passion, how much interest do you feel when you go to that kind of event. And on the x-axis, you see the exclusivity. And that is also an important dimension to consider when it comes to events. Events are cool when they're still a bit exclusive. And then if they become completely mainstream and everyone's just there, it becomes like not really an event, and it's like just everyday life, right? And so that is an important element of event quality. And what you see here is that the most exclusive and at the same time most relevant events, the events that you really want to be at, that are like super high quality, they usually don't need to do a lot of marketing. They don't have to promote themselves. They don't have to put billboards. They don't have to even put a listing on any event site. All they do is word of mouth, right? And so to get to those events, to find out about them, the only way is really to know people. You have to know people that have heard of that event. And that was the case, for example, with this electronic music concert in the Philharmonie. I only found out about it from Philip. I wouldn't have found out about it any other way, because it was already booked out many months before. They don't have to do any marketing, right? And so that's one really important thing to note here. The other thing that you can obviously do is to just walk around and discover. And I love to do that as well. And you can really stumble into some extremely exclusive, extremely specific, niche events like that by just walking around. And of course, the relevance might not be super, super high in those situations. You might just end up in a, I don't know, strip club, or you might end up in a completely weird art exhibition that you have no idea how to interpret. But it's fun and it's exclusive. And again, you get to know something very different, maybe some really unlikely encounters with people who can show you a whole new world. And sometimes you really discover a gem. And sometimes you discover something and you can't go there right now. And then it's really important to take notes and maybe put a little marker in your Google Maps and just say, this is a place I want to check out, right? I'm interested in vegan food. And so whenever I see a vegan food place that I haven't been to yet, I mark it in my Google Maps and I say, I want to check that out later. Then there are similarly posters and online ads, and that is like something that's not very exclusive. Everyone knows about it, and sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's not so relevant. And similarly, there are some platforms where you can just look for the big events, the big mainstream events that are happening in your city. And here I want to mention Berlin.de, which is for Berliners, obviously, but in every city, wherever you're living right now, every major city, they have some kind of register online for the main events. And I'm always surprised how inspiring that is. I usually don't really go to Berlin.de or a similar regional event page with the expectation of finding a great event, but I usually find amazing inspiration there. So I just want to do that as a little demonstration here. When you go to Berlin.de and you go to, let's say, recent events or current events, I'm actually always surprised. There's some stuff that I don't care about at all, like ice motorcycling, okay. But then I'm really into film, right? And here there's a Mute Film Festival. I mean, I would never have found out about this. I don't know if they do any social media marketing, but I'm into film, and maybe there's something here. I would look at that and then even go to the website and check that out. And there's a few events that I'd be actually interested to check out, like this one, Impro Festival. I am not exactly into impro, but I have some friends. For example, one of our guests here is into impro, and I have a few really, really cool ideas for how to include impro in what we're doing here, offline dating. And so this is something, if I had nothing to do in a couple of days, I would probably check that out. Improfestival.de. I already checked the website. It's a bit buggy, but it looks good. Looks really good. I would check this out and see if they have a cool show. 19 euros. If you have someone you want to take on a date, that also shows a lot of character when you find something like that, right? And that came from Berlin.de. So that's all definitely a legit source. Then on the more higher relevance side, but also not so exclusive because it's kind of public, you have all these specific event pages, like Resident Advisor for the electronic music scene. Facebook also, good event search, Eventbrite, the one we use here. And then there is one more that I want to show you because that's kind of something I discovered recently. But let's have a look at Resident Advisor first. You see all these parties happening, right? It's a lot every day. It used to be just on the weekend, but now Berlin has parties every single day. And it's also for other cities all over the world. Wherever there are electronic music events, you will have Resident Advisor events. And in fact, there will be a similar page, not Resident Advisor, but something similar for most other big communities, not just the music community. Also Tango, for example, has a Tango calendar. This is the Tango calendar. And it shows you all the events with respect to Tango. And there's one every single day. And yeah, there was a time when I used to go to these, real helpful. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you here as a kind of public way to find relevant events is TicketSwap. And TicketSwap is actually not designed to discover events, but more to actually buy secondhand tickets to events. But the cool thing is that you can also just look at the events that are happening this weekend, and then you see who's selling tickets to those events, and those events are usually already sold out. That's why there is a second-hand ticket market for those events. And oftentimes, those events have been sold out for a long time, and here you see someone who's actually selling their ticket for cheaper than the original price, and at the same time, you see what's going on at all. So that's quite a cool hack. And as I said, with the events that are really sought after, you usually have to set an alarm in this app. They also have a mobile app, and say, I want a ticket to that event. And then once someone sells it, it's immediately sold out within a few seconds. But if you're fast, you get the ticket. That's how I got the ticket to the Philharmonie event that I mentioned earlier. All right. I wanted to just say one more thing here about taking notes, because you see already some of these events are happening at some point, and sometimes you can't really make it, but you think, yeah, I want to go there someday, right? So one really important thing is to not let that moment pass and not let that information just slip. In that moment where you discover something awesome, but you can't do it this weekend, you have to make note of that somewhere. So that's also something that I highly recommend for people, to build some kind of note-taking system. I use Evernote, and I have a whole system here. It's something that, of course, goes beyond the scope of this workshop, but that's something we also talk about in the coaching, and we can talk about it later as well, where we basically structure our whole life into different categories and then make sure that we collect all the information that's really relevant. And one of those notes that I have here, very rough, very rough note, is just things to do in life. And every time I see something that I feel, oh, I want to try that one day, I just put a note in here, right? So you see how many different ideas are here, completely crazy, silly ideas, and that gives me a lot of inspiration. So when the next time comes where I want to do an event, or when I go to an event, I will look at this list, and then I'll have a big list of inspirations. And I've probably done a lot of these things already: ecstatic dance, squash, beach volleyball. I want to do this with my girlfriend, doing a squat tour through the desert. All that kind of stuff can go into this note. And one thing that I discovered also recently was the Rollschuh Disco. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I discovered it because someone sent me the link and I couldn't attend, but I put it in here and I said, I want to go there someday, right? So then I Googled that, and it's like every 2 or 3 weeks they have a party with roller skates, okay? And I couldn't really believe that this is something I can just go into, but they make it really easy for you. Just go there, and then they give you the roller skates for 2 or 3 euro. And I think I took a video there last time. It's really incredible for dating, especially, right? Everyone is rolling around that square in the middle, and everyone is bumping into each other all the time. So I can highly recommend that as well. But that was just an example. I want to show you another note. I think I made a note just for events. Yeah, just for events and festivals that I want to attend, right? Someone recommended me a certain event. There's some events that I've been to before, and I say, I want to go there again. Events in Germany, art events, tech events, different museums. So make sure you have some place to keep all these ideas, because that's wasted time if you find something and then you just forget about it and you never really get access to that information again when you need it, right? All right, so let's actually open here for a bit of Q&A if you already have some questions about what we talked so far.
Yeah, man. What? Sorry, my camera is the wrong way. Hi, I just came in like a couple minutes ago. So amazing thing, like the roller skates looked something so cool. But the thing, the note thing. What did you use exactly to take notes?
You say, what does it mean?
No, what? Because you had some. You used something to take notes. Well, can you just take?
Yes. This is Evernote. And there are different tools like that, right? And it doesn't really matter what you use. There's Notion, there's Evernote, there are research, what's called Roam Research, lots of different software tools. The important thing is that you have some place where you keep all this information. Even right now, as you're in this call, you want to have a note where you take the most important things that you're learning right now and record them. Because a lot of people, they live their whole life trying to memorize that and just overload their brain. And the brain is not made for storing all this information. It's made for creating thoughts, for having ideas, not for keeping them. And so this is kind of my external brain, right, that I built. And the best part of it is it's searchable, right? It's searchable. So it's indexed. I can just look at this note. I know Leipzig music venues, right? I went to Leipzig once. And of course, when I was there as a tourist, I talked to all the people there. What are the best venues? And then I put this note in here. And so now next time I'm in Leipzig, I know exactly where to go. I don't have to ask anyone, you know? So this is the kind of knowledge that I would never, ever have in the back of my mind. And I don't want to clog up my mind with that knowledge. But this is something, as I said, it is a bit of a project, and it's something we cover in the coaching. I'd be happy to talk to you in the individual call as well if you want to. We have a link where you can book a call with me, and I'll explain a bit more detailed how to build an external brain like that.
I'll post the link in the chat.
Oh, chill. Okay, cool. Well, that's interesting about making notes and having it easy, recollectable.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was my question. First Q&A question.
Well, I don't know if there's something we can do about it, but I've been around quite a long time, and there used to be like a lot of meetups that are just to meet with very little excuse to meet up in the old times of couch surfing and whatnot. And I think online dating to an extent killed that niche. And and it's how to kind of bridge that shortage or create a new abundance. I guess you kind of answered it, just like go to your whatever you're interested in, but maybe you can say more about it.
Yeah, man, I feel you. I also feel it changed actually over the last 10 or 15 years. And the culture in the mainstream doesn't even acknowledge the fact that events are for meeting people. But I think it's still that way. And when you think about it, you can realize that that's the only way this whole event thing makes sense. People come to events and they basically consume events these days as if that was an online content. But the point of events is, first, you can interact with the real person over there on the stage, right? Now you can interact with me, so you can ask me questions. That's the first thing. And the second thing is you can interact and get to know the other people. And I don't even know which one is more important. Like having a group of people assembled who have a similar mindset, bringing people who have similar ideas and mindsets together is a lot of work. And I can tell you from experience. And you can benefit from that by going to events because you have all these people assembled. And the only really hard and important thing is to break through this cultural mainstream brainwashing almost that you're not supposed to talk to people there. And so I think you can create huge abundance if you just break out of that and say, I'm going to just say hi to every single person at an event or as many people as I can, because it's a unique opportunity to meet the people that vibe well with me. And that's something I hope to do together with you since we're about to start this cooperation. Really excited about that. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can move.
I think now it's enough. Now it's enough.
Yeah. Hey, Akhil. So first of all, thanks for sharing all this information. I really appreciate that because this is information you're just giving out for free. So the question I had was, from whatever research you have done, I do understand this is meant to go outside in a more clubbing kind of an atmosphere, so it's more extroverted. Although you did mention, there are certain events like the sober party that you spoke about. So I'm usually an introvert, and with introvert, it is kind of easy to connect with other introverts. So the question I want to ask is, do you all have events which is catered only to introverts, so that we can connect and gel a bit more easily? When you go to a bar or to a club, it's a very high energetic kind of an environment, whereas an introverted kind of environment is a bit mellow. So yeah.
Very, very good question, man. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And it's something that a lot of people feel. And even myself, I don't even know if I'm an extrovert. I think I'm a bit of a mix. And so I go to both kinds of events, the very socially high energy ones, but I used to be more into mellow events myself. So I can feel you. And I want to share with you a couple of events that I really enjoyed myself when I was in that phase. And in fact, the words that come to my mind are from India. I used to live in India for a while, and one of the festivals that really fit my vibe back then was the Jodhpur Music Festival. It was like the Jodhpur, I think, folk music festival. Have you heard of that? The Riff?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't been there. I've heard quite a lot. It's quite insane.
It's absolutely insane. You go to Jaisalmer, this desert city, and there are these folk musicians singing in the castle at night, in the day. It's crazy, right? And again, a lot of interesting people hanging out here, all just chilling, having good music experience. Similarly, of course, the Jaipur Literature Festival, right? There is a festival just for book lovers in India, and obviously in every other big country as well. And so this is a place where people meet who are into reading a lot. It's a little miracle that they have that festival, right? Where they come together and discuss books. And I went there a couple of times. It was always a beautiful experience, and you meet other rather introverted people. I think there are events like that for almost any kind of passion. It's just very important that you find out what those passions are. And that's a bit of work. That's something. It takes some time. You want to take out just a day, from your busy life and say, okay, I'm just going to spend that day and figure out what am I really passionate about? What do I enjoy? What makes my heart beat higher?
Yeah. Completely agree. I'm sorry, Philip.
I'm super sorry. Just wanted to add one sentence to that, because that also came up in the chat. So what about us introverts and going somewhere? And I think it's a really important question, because some people think, okay, I have to go to loud parties because that's the thing to do, or that's kind of a pattern, and that's absolutely not true. So the truth is, there are events where a lot of people on the calmer side go, and they're just a little bit kind of harder to figure out, but they're more easy to find if you do this interest mapping first. Also, once you want to go to an event, sometimes it's even hard to remember what your interests are, which is good if you kind of did the work, kind of have it on that map and then find it out. But absolutely go to events where you have the feeling there are people that you're comfortable with. You can try to go to other events a little bit later, trying to get out of your comfort zone and get some exposure there. But at the beginning, you totally can find events that have people there that you're mostly comfortable with, 100%.
Totally. Thanks, Philip. And one thing that also came to my mind is I talked to someone yesterday, and he's really into chess. And so there's he said something like 15 different chess clubs in Berlin. So he can go to a chess event every evening. But then, of course, those events are oftentimes rather focused on the activity. And so then also it's a nice challenge for you to bring people and move them not just into the particular activity that the event is around, but actually move them out of that context and say, hey, let's have a drink after the chess game instead of just going home. All right, thanks a lot, guys, for these questions. And then let's move on to another really interesting and important chapter in this presentation, which is about organizing your own events. And that's something which is, of course, the next level. And it's something rather advanced, but you really want to consider it and at some point start organizing your own events. And there are many different benefits that you can get out of that. The first one is that your own events are an amazing way to build your own network, to bring people together, not around some common interest, but actually around you, right? You are at the center of your own events. And so people come around, and that's just really useful and fun itself. But there is also a dating aspect, which is you will extend your network, get to know more people who know more people in turn, and will introduce you to people. So your friend circle expands, and that other channel that we talked about in the beginning, friend circle introductions, actually can scale up and get you more introductions. You also actually practice your social skills big time when you organize an event. It's a huge challenge. Depending on what level you're at, it can be quite overwhelming to say, I'm going to bring some people together and have them do something fun. But that's an amazing challenge, because you basically practice all the different dimensions of leadership, communication, and empathy as well. There's so much that you learn when you start bringing people together. The other real important benefit of organizing events is that you can actually include them in your dating funnel, right? Every relationship has a different journey, but roughly there is an initial stage where you're meeting, and in this case it would be in the real world. And a lot of dating coaches, they only focus on this particular element, the initial encounter, but that's really just 1%, right? You have to then move these people along in your quote unquote funnel, and maybe get to know them a little bit over social media, chat with them a little bit, and then maybe you can get straight to dating. But in many cases, people will not be ready to go on a one-on-one romantic date with you. And so events are an amazing step in between, where you know someone and you kind of vibe well together, but it's not yet the right time to invite them on a date. It's not definitely time to ask them for a relationship or going out on a 3-day hike through nature. But it's a great time to invite them to your own party, to an event that you're organizing, or to an event that you're going to, right? And so when you organize events yourself, that is an amazing opportunity to show your character, to show exactly what kind of person you are, and also to show those other people how resourceful you are. Because as I said, it is a big challenge to organize people. And when you can do that, that's a huge demonstration of value. And it also shows that you're a proactive person, especially if you're new in a country or in a culture, and maybe you don't really get easily invited and easily connected to the community. Just by hosting your own parties, you really make a statement to say, hey, I can invite you guys. I don't need to wait for someone to invite me. I'm going to be proactive and build my own social center here. The really important thing to notice here, though, is that you want to start real small. And this is a picture I included here because it is probably my first social event that I organized. And I didn't even organize it alone. I was together with my flatmate here. We were living in America. I was still studying at Yale back then. And basically for Thanksgiving, all the American students flew out, right? The whole town was empty. And so me and my other German classmate and flatmate, we were basically alone, and we realized that there were like only 2 or 3 other European students there. That was the only people that were left. And so we decided to have a Thanksgiving dinner for stranded European souls in New Haven, Connecticut. And so that was it, right? And you can see I'm already quite nervous because, inviting these 2 people that I didn't really know was already a bit of a challenge for me back then. And once you get good at that, you can just easily scale that up, and you can go step by step. After that, I started actually hosting bigger parties. And I remember probably the best and something that I'll never forget was my 30th birthday. I got all my best friends to come out to Sicily, and we rented this Airbnb with a pool. And it's not that expensive when you share it with 15 or 20 people like that.
That was like kind of 10 years later, right?
Yeah, that was much later. And also much later, I had people coming over to my yard in another town and had this huge party. I organized birthdays where I started inviting my friends that were musicians, right? And that's something you can also do. You can just ask someone who's in the performing arts to give a concert at your event. And that's something people love and enjoy. I started organizing adventures and trips together. I like skiing, so sometimes I take my friends out to a ski hut. And again, all these things are not very costly when you can share it with a lot of people. And guess what? Those people are extremely grateful when you take the burden of organizing something, right? Everyone wants to play paintball at some point. Want to try that out? Yeah, for sure. But figuring out where to go and how to actually make it happen is a bit of a hassle. So most people never do it. So when you are the person who says, yeah, I got the schedule reservation, I got a spot, I got the transport, I know how to get there, people will be happy and they will be really, really grateful and join you and just come on that adventure, even if they don't know you well. Like this guy, I hardly knew him. He was a friend of a friend, but then we became friends because I gave him a great experience here playing paintball, right? So you can start really small with these dinner parties maybe, or just special occasion gatherings, and then you can then later move to bigger adventures. And this is something we also, of course, cover much more in depth. It's something that takes a lot of work, and we can talk about it. If you want to talk with me in detail about this, feel free to schedule the call that Philip already posted the link in this chat for. And yeah, one really important thing is that I wasn't like that always. And I wasn't like I am right now always. This is like around 15 years ago. I was in university, just coming out of university, extremely insecure, didn't feel at all able to talk, and especially I didn't feel at all attractive. So I would just look in the mirror and say, I'm ugly as fuck. I'm not going to be able to meet anyone. And then this changed, right? And this was the process, just starting really small, bringing small groups of people together and saying, I'm going to figure this out. And if I could do it, yeah, I really believe that all of you can do it too. And I want you to, yeah, basically implement this, go out, meet a lot of people, make use of events, find out what you're interested in so that you can go to the right events, and then build your own community, build your own network, get the kind of information that you can only get from word of mouth, and then have that baller social life that you've been dreaming of. If you want to get more detailed information, as we already said a few times, you can schedule a call with us. I think there's a second link, but they all both lead to the same page. Book a call.
They both work. So they both work. Yeah. Maybe add to that. So there's also the art of hospitality, and particularly for us introverts, if you want to organize an event, it could be as simple as cooking a dinner and invite 2 or 3 people over, or doing a tea ceremony, or whatever it is, or organize a trip to a science museum, or it doesn't really matter. But the good thing is, even if you're not so sure kind of what to say, or if you can do a good conversation, if you're just kind of a friendly host, this is usually something that people keep in mind, and everybody is so thankful for being invited and doing something like this. And if you, particularly if you're, for example, an expat, if you're new to a new town or something like this, it's a great way to start building your network. And if you do this for a while, at some point, all of a sudden you'll be invited to small dinners here and there. So it's, yeah, it doesn't always have to be something big and fancy.
Yeah, when you said tea ceremony, I immediately had to think of an event that I discovered recently, because I started getting interested in tea ceremonies, and then I just Googled it once, and I realized that there is a tea ceremony happening in the Humboldt Forum, and it's for free, and it's like every few days almost, or maybe once a month here, and then you can go and see this like 1.5, actually 2.5 hour tea ceremony. And a lot of people are just standing there watching and wondering what is going on. I went there once. I couldn't even stay through the whole thing, but there is something for everyone. As Philip said, even for the introverts, there are really, really interesting events happening all the time. Okay, then let's open the floor now for questions from you guys out there. Let me know whatever you find challenging, unclear, or want to get more information on, and I'll try to go through everything. We have the favorite lady.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I can't put my video on because I have a bad connection here. I'm very new to Meetup. somebody introduced me to another meeting app event, and one person who came there introduced me to this app, and so I've had it for long, but today is the only day I activated it and updated it and tried to check on meetings that are happening at the moment. Then I got on thinking my expectation is to get on with offline dating. So I'm thinking of something within that line, and I'm here eschewing so much information, so much knowledge, and I think you're really doing a great job and you should keep it up. I hope you get a very big platform that everyone could see the good works you're doing, because I mean, the information I've just gotten I joined after 7. Within this short period, I feel that I have paid, so much money to a proper event to, have this experience. And I think what you're doing is really great. And I'm looking forward to have a one-on-one session to know about the external brain storage thing, because it will help with my thesis. I'm quite new in Germany, less than a year, but I think you are doing great, and keep it up with your team, and keep up the good work. So nice to meet
Wow.
you all.
Thanks a lot.
Well,
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Any other questions?
Or maybe if you can give some tips on how to approach people in the more energetic events, because I know the music is loud, and for me also, I know, like, I don't speak English as a mother language nor German, so there are some barriers there. Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. I had the same thing. I wasn't very much into partying, and it took me a long time to find out how to meet people at a club or a disco. And it's a bit depressing because you think like everyone else is meeting here, everyone else is talking. How are they even able to hear each other, right? And I think the main thing that helped me was to find my tribe when it came to those kinds of events, find the kinds of music events that I really loved, where I could actually lose myself and dance like crazy and enjoy it, whether I was with someone or not. And that was the first thing that really helped me pump up my energy and get to the level that everyone else was at, even without taking any drugs or anything, right? And so that's the first thing, finding the events that you really enjoy, where you don't need anyone to be having a great time. The other thing was just to start talking and actually see every single interaction as a way to get more into your free, communicative, flowing state. And so most people go to a club, and if they don't really enjoy the music, they don't have a drink, they just get stuck and they say, what the hell, what am I doing here? How can I even start talking to anyone? And then you spend an hour in that state and it just starts getting worse and worse. And so the key is to just take a small step right at the beginning and say, I'm just going to talk to someone, even if it's not someone I'm interested in at all. A club is here for talking. People accept that if you just come up to someone and approach them in a club, it's okay. And so just do that and say, I'm going to say hi at least. And that's already a much better start to get you onto that upward trajectory of being then able to go to the next person and say a bit more than hi. Because actually what happens, not just to extroverts, but most people, once they get into a flow of talking and they allow their brain to just create ideas and let them flow out, it actually becomes easier. And so you want to just start somewhere with a very small, tiny little challenge that you can actually easily do, like say hi to the first person that you see. Hello, what's up? How you doing? And that's it. And then you'll be much better at talking to the next person. Of course, this is a topic that deserves its own webinar or even series of webinars. We covered some of it in the last webinar. So if you want to get more information on that, just feel free to book a call with that link and I'll be happy to talk in more detail about this.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a question. So I think a lot of people can just talk normally, talk about casual subjects, talking about hobbies, weather, sports, it's easy for a lot of people, but a lot of people are having, a lot of men are having trouble with taking that into the next level. You know, something more interesting, like there's a like an interesting involving chemistry or this attraction with each other. How to create those attraction or chemistry do you think is a good method?
Yeah, that is something that I would love to answer with four levels of intensity when it comes to a conversation. There are four levels, and the first one would be just non-personal small talk. So what's going on in the world, some weather related politics questions. So that stuff is completely not related to the person and also not very emotional. And that's the lowest level.
Mm-hmm.
The second level would be to actually go into personal information, right? To ask about what the other person does and where she's from. And that's still not very interesting. It's non-sensitive personal information. But then once you go to the third and the fourth level, that's when things become spicy.
Yeah.
And that's when things become intimate. And that's when you want to make that step of opening up something that you usually don't open up to complete strangers. And that third level would be to share real emotions. And so one emotion that you can always share is the emotion of the moment when you are actually talking to someone and it's loud in a club and you really don't like the music a lot. If you can share that in a very authentic, very non-filtered way, that's a great way to connect. And some people will be repulsed and they will say, no, I love the music. But that's great already, because then you have a strong emotional reaction and then you have emotions at play, and then you can play with that and work with that. Or some people will say, yeah, actually, I hate this music too. And then again, you have a good emotional connection. You both have a similar emotion and it connects you and it makes things more special. But then there's another level, which is also very powerful, connecting on the level of vulnerability. And that might be a negative emotion that is not just in the moment, like not just, hey, I don't really like the music, or let's go somewhere else, it's too cold, or I don't feel very talkative right now. It's something more deep than that. And so sometimes I open up about my story in the first few moments of an interaction. Sometimes I go up to someone, and if they don't seem very interested, I actually say right away, hey, this is my life story. I was like this before. I was really insecure. I don't feel so secure about my skin. I used to have acne. And I just tell them that right away, yeah? Because I don't have anything to lose. And I know that this kind of vulnerability makes for more interesting conversation than staying on the lower levels. And so that's one way you can use to create more emotional, more intense interactions and get away from the small talk. Just say what you feel. Of course, this means that you need to learn how to know what you feel, because that is something a lot of people don't really have access to in all moments. Like if you ask me right now, what am I feeling? I'm going to have to work on that. I'm going to have to practice. I have to think really hard. What am I feeling? But that is something that you can practice. And so that's something you want to do over and over again in some kind of routine, in some kind of practice. And so, for example, we'll be starting the coaching together, and you'll be joining the morning calls. And in the morning, that's what we do every morning. We practice how to access what's in there on the mental, on the emotional level as well, and let that flow out. And once you practice that, it's more accessible even in these high pressure situations out there in a club with a lot of loud music blaring. Maybe Philip has also something on this question.
Thank you, Achil. The often, when there's a communication situation, and then it can easily happen that the mind is blocked, and then it's really, really hard to first of all kind of steer the attention from the attention on yourself, on your inwardness, maybe on your anxiety or whatever. The feeling is that makes you blocked. It's not easy to actually get yourself thinking. So what Achil said, the easiest thing is really often to try to figure out what a feeling is and try to share this authentically, look at a person in the eye. Another thing could also be try to make a guess what the other person, how the other person might be feeling. And then you could, after having said something, you could also kind of try to address that, and you'd say, hey, am I sensing this or that feeling in you or so, and then that's also easy, and the other person can then say yes or no. So it can be an easy thing to get started, and it also helps to then get your attention on the other person, at least make an assumption based on facial expressions, body movement, tone of voice, and so on. You try to feel all that and make a little bit of an assumption of what state the other person might be in, because everybody at the end of the day is emotional, and most people have some level of social anxiety, but that can very strongly vary depending on what the situation you're in and how familiar you are with it yet.
Okay, one more chance for people to ask their own questions, maybe share their own challenges in this realm of socializing, and maybe something particularly with respect to events. We still have some time for questions here.
No question. Just want to thank you for both your time and your all of your very valuable. I think a lot of people here are grateful for this time you're spending and sharing.
Thanks, Aidin. From where are you tuning in?
I'm from Norway.
Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You're in Berlin, right?
Yep.
I'm coming to Berlin one day. It sounds so cool, man.
Yeah.
Such a vibrant city. Yeah.
Yeah. That brings me to a topic actually, which is related to events. Everyone I think has these places in the world that they want to visit someday. And you could call it like your personal meccas, the places that you really want to visit someday. And I have a list like that. And that's also something you want to keep track of in some note-taking system. And at some point in your life, you can just make that happen, and you can take people along on those kinds of adventures. So I'm doing a couple of trips like that. I love skiing, right? So I'm going skiing in a couple of weeks with a few people that I really like. And
then where are you going?
Austria. And there's a hut that we rented. Again, just a simple Airbnb, and it's kind of very economical when you share it with 6 people. And then that whole adventure is a huge event that is actually going to bring that friend circle closer together, because those experiences, those kinds of events are what people remember for the rest of their lives. So I remember one friend, I only met him 3 times. The first time was a dinner. The second time we went to a music festival. Okay. And that was like 6 years ago or 3-4 years ago, but we had the time of our lives together, just me and him. And then now he's traveling through Germany and just hit me up on the phone a few days ago. He says like, I'm in Berlin, I want to see you. And so just because we had this very intense event together, we are friends forever and bound by these experiences, and we'll tell these stories to our grandkids, right? So that's also a nice value of events, especially when you combine it with your personal mecca, something that you really want to do, and then you bring some people along and do it together.
Yeah, man. It's like some places you just feel in your bones or in your soul. This is where I'm going. I'm going here, and I know like my soul belongs to this place. I have to go there, and it's amazing what you say about sharing those things, because I think those people you take with you, it's bound to be magical in a sense, because your soul is just clapping along the way, and they're going to feel that. Also, when you go to this event, like doing challenging things with people, for example, like we're talking. By the way, did you make No Game?
Yeah,
man, that's how I got. That's an amazing app, by the way. And like, say you're approaching girls with a guy, like just from that session alone, you guys are getting so much, like, because you're out of your comfort zone, you're challenging each other and doing stuff. Like that's why people on boot camps, like military boot camps, like after like brothers, and that's the same thing. You're doing challenging stuff together, and then afterwards you have been through all of these emotions together, and you can relate to that, and that's like you've been vulnerable, you've been brave, and that's if you can combine those kinds of events with some people, like you're just like your bond is just going to skyrocket. Like a biological cheat code kind of thing.
Very good,
Yeah.
And it even works in relationships. So I got to know my girlfriend, and pretty much immediately after 2 or 3 dates, we started going on trips together, also because she was still living in another city. And so that was an invitation for me to rent a car and pick her up and then just go to the nature and show her the places that I wanted to visit. It conveys a lot of character, right? When you can do that. And then you go straight to that level of figuring difficult things out, sleeping in a camper van, camping out in the wild. And that really connects you with the partner, even when in the situation it might seem very difficult. Like I remember days where we are out together, me and my girlfriend alone in the Alps, just hiking without a house, with a tent in our backpack, and she hated it. But we survived, obviously, and we came out much stronger because we have this difficult experience that we went through together. And one more thing I want to mention here, just because I'm talking about that specific story, is that I think the moment where my girlfriend and me, we really got together was when I organized a birthday party for her. And that's actually something you can do as well. Once you get good at organizing events, you can not just organize your own events, you can actually help other people organize events that would never do that on their own. And so here my passion for architecture played in. I found a cool tower that you can rent in the area where she lived. And it was like an old water tower, but it was repurposed as a holiday home. And I loved the architecture of that place. And I said, I'm just going to book that. And even if she doesn't want to celebrate her birthday there, I will just stay there alone. It's cool. I love those kinds of places, right? And so I booked it around her birthday. And then I told her, hey, we can just celebrate your birthday there. Bring your friends. And obviously that's something that shows a lot of love, you could say, right? And that was when it clicked for both of us that we really want to be together.
I don't know if this counts as an event or not, but this is something that I discovered. I love to travel, and Berlin has a vast network of public transport, So I just decided one day that, let's just take the public transport, travel to wherever it goes, and something completely random came to my mind, like, let's just travel. And in this, I found out that I spoke to at least 6 to 7 people. And when I was talking to them, it was basically on my interest. And I don't know if this counts as an event, but this is something I would love to share. Like, do something completely random, and you might find something very new. So I met an Australian girl, and she loved dogs. And we had a conversation close to an hour because she was also traveling by tram. So I'm not sure if this counts, but this is something I wanted to share.
Very good point. I think it's very remarkable that we can basically switch from different modes of being. And one mode of being is just we're going to work, we're on a tram, and we have to get there on time. And then we really don't want to do something that breaks that plan and just disturbs the balance. But when we go and we say, I'm not planning anything right now, I'm just traveling around. Sometimes I take the train, I just drive to the last stop and just see what's out there in Brandenburg around Berlin. And in those moments, you have a completely different mode of being. You're on the same train, but you're more open to those unexpected encounters. And so I think one thing that is really useful to have is to kind of switch between those modes intentionally and say, I'm just going to go to work, but I will actually take a tram earlier, so I have a little bit of buffer, and then I'll open my mind to all the possibilities that arise. And it happens all the time to me, right? That I meet someone on the train and I really have a good conversation, and then I just get out with them, even though it's not my stop, and I say, I'm just going to talk to that person for a little bit. I have some time. If I have planned it properly, I always have 5 minutes extra, and I can just have a little conversation and then get back into the train, get back into that more targeted, more intentional mode.
and just also taking a train or anything, and you just go somewhere in some direction, just kind of an exploratory way. It's also, I think that's also what Nav described. Sounds like a very cool way to get a kind of new experiences, and by that you actually also, I think, automatically, unwillingly gathering, interesting topics and things to potentially use in later conversations. So it's always good to stimulate your mind by doing things that are a little bit out of the ordinary. It's helpful.
Yeah, and again, I would say it's really important to keep notes of all these experiences, and that way you can really weave them into your storytelling and your communication later on. And so again, make sure you have some kind of note-taking system, and it's organized in a way that it's actually fun to fill out when you have a new experience, when you discover a new place. And actually, when you have a really important realization or an idea, make sure you write it down as soon as possible. And then there's also an important project that people in the coaching, for example, go through, which is to write down the most amazing stories of their life, kind of write a short autobiography, so that you distill the most important moments that you experienced on all these different travels, and make sure you think about them for a little bit, and also think about how you're going to tell those stories. Because if you just keep them in your memory somewhere and think that they're going to come out in the right moment, you're mistaken. You need to take a moment to think about how to structure a story, and have a bit of preparation time where this is how the story should start, this is how the main action should unfold, and this is the punchline of the story. I need to remember that. And so just by writing it down once, you prepare your mind to deliver this story in a powerful way when the situation arises where someone talks about something related, and then you're like, oh yeah, I have a story about that. Boom, and you bring it on. And every time you tell it, it gets better. It doesn't have to be perfect at the beginning, but just by writing it down once in that note-taking system, you already make sure that the delivery is on a much higher level than if you just reconstruct it every time in your mind. This is also something we cover, as I said, in more detail. It's something I'd love to talk to you in detail. If you want to book a call, feel free.
I have a question.
Yeah, shoot. So last question, and please remember your question, because I just want to add something here, which is important. Sometimes we can feel like there's nothing interesting we can tell about ourselves, and that can be a very strong feeling, and it can really be true felt in that moment. And it's usually never true, because everybody is as good as they are, and it's usually really about kind of learning again to bring that to the outside, what's actually inside you. So when you sit down and try to write down something, it's not about trying to find something that could be interesting to other people. It's about something that you found interesting and that you experienced, and it can be anything. Because when you write it down, there's nobody there. And if you really go into this exercise, no matter how, maybe if you think your life is not interesting at the moment, or there's nothing interesting, you always find it if you go into these exercises. And it's really important just to find things that are your stories that kind of truly happened, and to go into this. So I just want to mention that, so that you don't think, okay, I have to have experienced that or 1,000 travels or whatever kind of stuff. It's everybody's exciting, and it's all in them. So it's very, very important. And now to the question, please.
Yeah, my question is, so when you go to the event and you meet a bunch of people, and someday you really connect deeply with people, and you end up becoming really close friends, and sometimes you talk with a lot of people, but you don't connect with anyone, and it was just very in the shallow surface level. So do you think this is, in a psychological perspective, do you think this is because I thought before it was a purely luck, sometimes you just meet people who are just really, you have a good chemistry with them, sometimes you don't. So I thought it was a purely luck. But now I'm thinking, as you acquire more like powerful storytelling skills, or you do exercises to like do the self inner exercises, meditate, or know more about yourself, do you think you become more magnetic as a personality, and it's not just a luck anymore, but it's you can replicate this, and as you do it more and more, do you think just you have like stronger magnets to people so that you attract more people and you become more charismatic in this way, do you think?
100%. Absolutely true in my experience. And this is, I think, the definition of confidence, that you basically feel like when you show yourself and you show your true self, the people that are meant to be in your network, they feel attracted and they see the value. And you're still gonna repulse some people. You're still going to not match with everyone, right? And the key here will be to actually find out quickly whether the person that you're talking to is someone that you would be interested in, that they would be interested in, and then whether there is a match or not. But you will never get to that point where you can convince everyone to become your friends, right? And this probably something like around 10%, 5% of people that you can become friends of at a typical event, even when they're already pre-filtered, even when they already have the same interests. And so that's something your intuition will also get better at, discovering quickly the people who you could become friends with. And then when you have the confidence to just show yourself, it'll become very, very much easier to connect with those people that are meant to be. And you'll also get better at discovering very quickly whether someone is not meant to be with you in any kind of relationship. And so here what's important is what we covered also in the last webinar, polarizing and expressing yourself quite unabashedly, quite without filters, right? And polarizing rather than trying to please everyone. That's something that we covered in the last webinar. I'm also happy to talk about it in more detail in the coaching, or if you're interested in that, again, last chance to book a call. We can jump on a call in the next few days. We have some time for that. Let me know about that. And I guess we're at the end of time now. So I'll let Philip close out the meeting officially.
Yeah, thanks, Achil. And really thanks everybody for staying and interacting. It's so important that this is interactive, and also for the ones of you who just stayed in and listened, that's also nice. It's sometimes also not easy to speak up in such a group call. So yeah, wow. We're also very, very happy about the positive feedback and the thank yous. Achil and I are really trying to help everybody really change, because learning social skills is everybody can learn. It's not easy, but it's absolutely possible for everybody, and it's such a life transformation. And try to get people a bit away from relying solely on online dating, because it puts most of us down a very, very dark road. And we even get the impression, that nobody likes us just because online dating doesn't work, and that's a total myth. So we're really happy to see people attending this, having an interest, asking questions, and getting maybe a little bit of value out of it. So thanks a ton. If you want to be informed about other webinars that we might be doing, then you can also go to the website, register for the newsletter. And if you want to talk to Achil, you can, as we said now, I think 100 times, you can make use of our calendar link, of which we are proud, because it's very easy to book something. You can book a little call, or just write us. So thanks a ton, everybody, for joining. We're wishing you a very lovely evening, and take care. Bye.